Alright, so this video we're going to be going over Estoc, all the ins and outs of it, how to use it, what to do. It's going to be Estoc crazy really. I'm going to try and keep it as short as possible. We're going to be breaking it down into 4 parts. So we've got spacing, whiff punishing, spacing and whiff punishing come together. We've got pressuring, shield poking, and then at the end we're going to go over some different tips and tricks for Estoc, as well as my own playstyle and how I like to use it with all my swaps and stuff. So to start, we'll go over the build. So it's basically just a 135 quality build. The main thing to really look for is the 40 endurance. You don't want any less when using Estoc. The reason for this is like shield poking, so you want to have a high endurance pool. If you're going to be shield poking, you don't really want to be guard broken very easily. When using Estoc, you either want to be using it on a dex or a quality build. So the reason for this is Leo Ring. So Leo Ring, it allows you to get counter damage on trades, and that doesn't work on any sort of elemental infusion. So no lightning, chaos, fire, whatever you want to call it. Estoc only gets the counter damage on physical builds. Okay, so little tips before we start going over the spacing and whiff punishing is Estoc, it can't be used as a straight sword. So with a straight sword you can dead angle like this, and you can catch people from all directions and hit them with different timings of the straight sword. With an Estoc, it's as simple as wherever you R1, it's going to go forwards. So it needs to be played a lot more technical, basically. You can't be throwing out random R1s trying to bait people into it. It doesn't work like that. Yeah, so it is a lot more technical weapon than a straight sword, so it does become quite difficult to use at the start, but as soon as you kind of get the swing of it, you should be okay using it. Hopefully this video is going to help demonstrate just the small different bits to an Estoc that you can use to your advantage when fighting opponents. So firstly, we're going to go over spacing and whiff punishing. So for spacing and whiff punishing, we're going to be using an ultra just for now. The reason for this is it's quite easy to space. It's easy to whiff punish. It's a good weapon to kind of practice with Estoc, get to know the range and how to space, basically. For this, we're going to be using a Leo Ring. The Leo Ring, like I said, it works by giving counter damage. So if you were to trade a hit with, like, say, a straight sword, you would win the trade with the Leo Ring. You'd do considerably more damage due to the counter damage from the Leo Ring trade. But saying this, you don't always need to trade with someone. You can space and whiff punish them and still get the counter damage if you time it right. So Smile's going to do an R1 for me, and we get 278. That's a Leo Ring trade, so we got counter damage there. And just to show it without Leo Ring, if you were to do another R1 and a 186, so it's a considerable amount of damage that you get from it, like quite a lot really. So yeah, that's why Leo Ring's so important for Estoc, is just the amount of damage you can do just by trading attacks. That's really all it is for ultras, is spacing and whiff punishing. So when fighting an ultra like this, you want to try and bait out that R1. It's one of the most easy attacks to whiff punish with an Estoc, so you kind of want to try and get them to do that attack. So a good way of I like to try and get people to do it is by getting in nice and close, doing a little half circle. He's going to try an R1 at me, I'm just going to punish it. We didn't get the Leo Ring trade there, but we did get the punish on it. Yeah, so that's really it for ultras. There's not really much you can do with it. It is basically just to space and whiff punish. It's not like you can pressure very well against an ultra, as they can just melt through your R1s. So you can't really shield poke against an ultra. It doesn't work. It does way too much stam damage. You will get guard broken by it. So there is no point doing it, just to kind of showcase what it'll do. So go for it. I'll go again. I've basically lost all of my stamina there, and I can't really roll out of that again. So if he was to do another R1 after that, I would have just taken the hit. So you don't really want to be doing that. No, like, shield poking against an ultra. However, with straight swords, it's a bit of a different story. For spacing a straight sword, I like to not do that, preferably, but you can do in some circumstances. So, like a running attack, you'll be able to space and whiff punish on reaction quite easily. When you're going to be whiff punishing, say, like an R1, you don't really want to whiff punish the first R1. The first R1, if it's a good player who knows how to use a straight sword, that first R1 is going to be a bait. So you don't want to be going in for that. They will just R1 a second time and yeah, catch you before you even get an R1 out. So a good way to kind of space that is to, if they're going to do an R1, wait for the second one. Never go for the first one, especially if it's against a good player. They will know that you're going to come in close, and all they have to do is throw out that other R1, and they'll knock you out before you can even do anything. So, how do you fight straight sword with an Estoc? It's quite easy. I don't like to stay far away. I like to be up in the face. So it's good to be this close to a straight sword. You want to be in their face. The Estoc has the better matchup, so you are going to win with like trades, anything like that. We've been over this. So a good way to pressure a straight sword is just tap the shield. It's as simple as that. And you can strafe around and go for a BS. It is risky because you can both get it, or one or the other. So it does get kind of risky. But what you really want to be looking for is if are they going to roll, or are they going to try an R1 out of a hit, out of you like hitting their shield. So for this purpose, we're just going to have Smile roll. So Smile just holds his shield up. So he likes to roll. I believe that was the second hit. So 2 hits, and then he likes to roll out of it. So I've already noted that he likes to roll after the second hit. So when we do it again, we can catch him. And that's where the pressuring comes in. And you don't want to stop after that. He's rolled. You're going to hit him with that R1 after, and catch him with the roll. And you're basically going to do exactly what you did before and just keep in their face and keep putting pressure on them. Keep in their face. They will try and roll. They'll mix it up, but yeah, he's playing a bit hard to get right now. But keeping the pressure on, you will eventually roll catch them. And if they don't poise roll through it, you can follow up with a second R1, obviously. And yeah, it's keeping the pressure on like that. That is basically everything for pressuring with an Estoc. It's against a straight sword, it's basically just in their face all the time. You want to be on that shield. You want to be looking for, are they going to roll? Are they going to R1? What are they going to do? You need to be reading your opponent and, you know, trying to learn what they like to do when you're up against them. They will try and mix it up as well, like Smile did, and that can throw you off as well. Smile's quite good at that. But yeah, you just want to try and roll catch them. If they're going to R1 out of hit stun, just keep going with the R1s. So pressuring, it can't work against certain weapons. So Estoc is completely outclassed against any fast curve swords. Things like Follower Saber is fine. You can use an Estoc against that. It's slow enough. But like a PKCS, you're completely outclassed, and you will you do technically lose the matchup. But if the PK guy knows what he's doing, it's kind of game over from there. You can't pressure a PK at all. The pressure is coming from the PK. You can't reapply the pressure in the same way that it does. All you can really do if you were going to fight a PK with an Estoc is just space out and just wait for them to make a mistake. And it does become a waiting game. A lot of PK players these days are quite passive as well, so they'll want you to come to them, and with an Estoc, you can't approach anything like a curve sword. So yeah, for fighting a curve sword, which I don't recommend you do with an Estoc, but if you were going to fight it, it's basically a waiting game of you trying to wait out their attacks and wait for them to make a mistake. Like if they were to whiff a running attack, you'd be able to space and whiff punish that. Things like R1s, if they miss an R1, usually you don't want to be going for it. It is, since Estoc and PK have similar range, it does get quite difficult to space and punish it. It can be done with a lot of practice, but you are still going to lose the matchup, because if you trade, the PK is still going to be able to catch you again. Another weapon you can't be using, well, you shouldn't be using Estoc against, is things like a dagger. So a Murky, Corvian, anything really with quick step. Quick step, it can just, if it's on low latency or even high latency, they can quick step around your Estoc quite easily. So using something like a Murky, you're counted pretty hard if you're using an Estoc. We're going to go over at the end ways to if you were going to use an Estoc, ways to counter it as best as you can. Things like quick step or curved sword. But basically, I don't recommend fighting it whatsoever. For the purposes of practicing, you can sure go for it, but just know that you are outclassed, and if it's a really good player you're up against, then chances are you will lose against the matchup. It's nothing to do with like yourself, your playstyle. It's basically the weapon you're using is completely outclassed by the other opponent's weapon. So in that certain scenario, you'd want to try and swap from Estoc to something else. But obviously, for the purposes of this video, we're just going to be using Estoc. Okay, so for the third part, we're going to look at shield poking. Shield poking is difficult to know when to do it. It's the best way to explain how to shield poke is to treat shield poking like a greatsword. And that doesn't mean shield poke against a greatsword. It means play shield poking like you would play a greatsword. So you can't shield poke on reaction, and the reason for this is because you will get the knockback effect, and you'll lose health, and you will lose stamina, quite a lot of it, and you won't be able to throw an attack out. So you won't get this animation. I'll try and get Smile to demonstrate what it looks like. I'm sure you've seen it before if you're ever using an Estoc turtle. So if he just R1s at my shield with anything really, if I try and shield poke out of it, I will get knocked back like this, and it's as simple as that to get guard broken. So it's knowing when to shield poke. So when do you know when to shield poke then? So shield poking, like I've said, it needs to be treated like a greatsword. So if you're using a greatsword, you can't R1 on reaction. You're not going to be able to reaction trade with someone, but you can prediction trade. So a good example of this is if we were to hit each other with an R1. If I do a shield poke out of that R1, I will win that trade. But that's knowing if he's going to R1 again out of hit stun. So you want to kind of test that, see if they do it. So I'm going to do my first R1. He does again, and I knock him out of that. So I win that completely. He didn't even touch my shield at that point. Another good one for shield poking is crossbow. So if Smile had a crossbow out, what you will find a lot of people like to do is they like to hit your shield with a crossbow and then R1 from there against your shield. But a lot of people kind of forget that you have an Estoc, so you can just shield poke out of that and win against them. It will spook them quite a lot, and they'll think, what is going on? How are they doing this? But yeah, it's a good thing to do against like a crossbow. So yeah. So I win that trade completely again against him. So that's a good way to counter crossbows with shield poking. We've basically gone over shield poking quite decently, I'd say. It's something you don't want to use much, due to, like I've said, high risk, high reward. Shield poking can actually lose you some matches if, like what happened earlier, if you get the knockback effect, you can get guard broken from there, and then from that you take a lot of damage from a riposte. So try and keep shield poking to a minimum and throw it out when it's necessary. So like we've already been over, crossbows, it's a good way to shield poke from that. On trades, if they're going to trade with you out of an R1, it's a good way to shield poke as well. Sometimes you can just shield poke against, like out of the blue, so you can just shield poke like that, but it's going to be kind of risky, because if they're going to R1, they might hit you with that knockback effect again. So that's why it's all about prediction with shield poking. For a last part of shield poking, we can go over a spear. So a lot of people will use a spear and they will just R1 at your shield. With a spear, you can shield poke out of the R1s from a spear, which is, yeah, like that. So you do win in that scenario against spears. So even if they were to just R1, R1, R1 at your shield, you can just shield poke out of it and win the trade from there. So yeah, we'll go on to the fourth and last part. Like I said, I'm trying to keep this video as short as I can, going over the main points of Estoc, what to do and what not to do. So yeah, we'll move on to the last part. Right, so for the final part of this video, we're going to be looking at just some tips for Estoc. We've already been over one, which is the use of crossbow and shield poking out of it. It's quite a good way to counter crossbow, really, especially crossbow straight swords or anything for that matter. Yeah, so another one is perseverance. So Ismail perseverances right now. I get this knockback effect, and if he was to hit me from there, it would give me counter damage. So he would get significant damage off on me just from that. So how do you counter perseverance? It's relatively simple. If he perseverances, I can just shield poke, and I believe I won that. I think so.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Another way to counter it is by running attack. So running attacks work as well. So if he perseverances again, that works. Less effective, really, because of the Estoc running attack. It's quite one-directional. So for the final bit, I'm going to be going over my own playstyle just a little bit, just to kind of show off what I like to do with Estoc. So I always, at the start of a match, I will always have my rings set up in this order. So shield ring, life ring, and I don't really ever take Prisoner's Chain or Ring of Favor off. So how I like to use these rings is kind of how a lot of other people like to use them as well. So as soon as you get hit once, so Smile hits me, even if, hit me Smile. There we go. So I've lost damage there. I took damage. Swap that to some Princess Ring, and if you were to take damage again, take off the shield ring and then put on Leo ring from there, and then basically throughout the whole fight now I'll be using this ring setup. I might swap the ring to, so a Sun Princess ring I'll probably swap near the end of the round. If I'm low on health, I'll have it on probably Blue Tear Stone ring, just to try and negate some of that damage. So that's my ring setup, kind of gone over the way. So this is my inventory. This is what I like to run with Estoc. You'll find quite a lot. I don't like to use Estoc kind of... I don't like to just use Estoc. So I like to mix it up. I like to throw my opponents off with different attacks. This mainly comes from a strength build playstyle back in the day. I like my swaps, so swap into different things to try and throw my opponent off. So things like a Corvian, if I was to get in close, I can swap to a Corvian. I've got my Lothric Holy Sword, so a lot of people you find, they'll play quite passive against you if you are outmatching them in that scenario. And they'll play quite passive, and a good way to kind of get them to come back to you again is to use a Lothric Holy Sword. It usually puts a bit of pressure on them from a distance, makes them quite impatient, and they can come to you. I have my Sharp Estoc, of course, but then right next to my Estoc, I've got a Blessed Estoc and a Deep Estoc. The reason for both of these is sometimes I'm a bit of a regen monkey, so I like to swap to this if the opponent is playing quite passive and they've already done a bit of damage to me. I'll swap to this just to get a little bit of regen going with a Sun Princess ring, of course, just to get 3 sources in. And then once I feel like the opponent's ready to come back again, or I'm ready to start pressuring, I'll move back to my Sharp Estoc and my Black Knight Shield again. The Deep Estoc, it's kind of just there for a source of chip damage. It's not a lot of chip damage. Dark Estoc does 1 point less of chip damage than Deep Estoc. So yeah, the 1 point, it's not a lot, but you may as well just take it over Dark. It's for, so if you pop someone's tears and they've got the shield up and they're turtling away, you can kind of just chip them away. And they won't really notice that you've changed because obviously the Estoc doesn't change. So yeah. For shields, I mainly like to swap to Dragonhead Shield. It is one of my favourite shields. I like to throw it out every now and then, especially when the opponent gets in close. The reason for this is Dragonhead combos into 2 R1s from an Estoc, so if you hit them, and then you'll catch them with that as well. It is a great mix-up to do, personally. It's one of my favourites. So yeah, basically, Dragonhead Shield, that L2, it combos into 2 R1s from an Estoc, and then another L2 from the Dragonhead Shield is a roll catch. So you do a significant amount of damage just from that. Also, what I like to do is I like to not really use Estoc running attacks too much, as they do have decent range, but it's not the best. I like to, if I'm doing a running attack, I'll swap to a War Banner, and I'll get considerably more range with that, and then I can quickly swap back to Estoc and get back to what I'm already doing. So yeah, I do have a Gundyr there. That's really for wake-ups. I don't use it too much because it takes too long to set up. As you can see, I will be fat rolling with it, so I have to take off quite a lot if I'm going to swap to that, so I'm not fat rolling. So it does become kind of difficult from there to... You got to be pretty quick on the swaps and removing your shield and your crossbow. And that brings me onto the crossbow. I do like to use crossbow quite a lot. Mainly Knight's crossbow. I usually come across people with shields quite a lot, so it doesn't really make much sense for me to use anything but Knight's crossbow. If they're not using a shield, I'll use heavy crossbow. I don't like to use Arbalest much, mainly because I find it quite difficult to aim. It's a bit weird. It's just very big and clunky on the screen, as you can see, compared to the heavy crossbow. If you were to pull out Arbalest, it's very clunky on the screen. It comes down to personal preference, really. But the damage difference, I believe, is there's not much. So put your shield down small. We'll just test the crossbows here, just for purposes. 162, 177. So there's a bit more damage with the Arbalest, obviously, but personally, if I'm using a crossbow against someone who's not using a shield, it will be heavy, just because I find it easier to aim. And yeah, so we'll go over now how to how a good way to counter things like quick step and a PK, or any of those weapons that are going to outclass you. So with quick step, if you are going to be using an Estoc, you want to have a crossbow. Crossbow will work best against these scenarios. You want to be you're mainly crutching on the crossbow, as Estoc can't really do much until you hit them with that crossbow shot. So if he quick steps towards me, I can hit him with that. And that's basically what you want to be doing against quick step. You're holding a crossbow. What they're going to do is they're either going to roll or quick step. You need to learn the timing of when the quick step ends, when the iframes stop, and you can release your crossbow shot. With rolling as well, same principle applies. And from there you can throw out an R1 from your Estoc, get back into safety, reload, and proceed to do the thing over and over again. And it's the same for curved swords. You are crutching on the crossbow. That is the gist of it. With PK, you don't... PKs, so you can block with a PK. You can block the crossbow shot, and you can R1 out of it, just for demonstration purposes. And you can just keep going from there. Due to the PK just being a faster weapon overall, you can just keep going with those trades. Even with Leo Ring, you're putting on too much pressure with a PK. There's not much. You don't want to be trading against a PK, as they're just going to keep going. Especially if they dead angle it, they'll hit you with the R1 before your Estoc attack even comes out. So if a PK is guarding, what you want to do, guard for me, and do the exact same thing you did, and roll out. You don't want to try and trade into it again. You are crutching on the crossbow, like I said. Estoc's just there as your extra bit of damage for when you do get that hit on them. It's just there to trade after it. Because, yeah, crossbows, they also get Leo Ring damage, because crossbow bolts do thrust damage, so you do get Leo Ring trades. So that's a good thing about crossbows. But, yeah, so for that scenario, like I said, you're crutching on crossbow. You're not, the Estoc's kind of there as your extra source of damage. So that's why in that scenario I don't really recommend using Estoc much unless you are good with a crossbow. For scenarios like that, you want to either have another curved sword, or against a PK, you probably want to pull out something like a Murky or anything with quick step. So yeah, that was as short as I wanted to make it on Estoc. I hope it was helpful. Went over some good tips for it. I know this video is kind of late to the Dark Souls scene, but yeah. Any other questions about Estoc or anything like that, don't be afraid to leave them in the comments. I'll try and respond as best as I can, as I know I've not covered everything in this video. Like I say, I wanted it to be quite short and simple. But I will leave some other links in the video description. Solus Creed, for one, he went over Estoc a good bit and how to use it. He did a very good video on that. I'll leave Distant Tide's channel, as he's a very good Estoc player, and I'll leave his build as well, as his Estoc build is probably the best kind of Estoc build you can get. I like it because you've got the high vitality, so you can use things like crossbow, like Knight's Crossbow with a Black Knight Shield Estoc, and still be wearing full Wing Knight armor. So yeah, it's a good build for that, so you can swap to all the different armor sets. So yeah, thanks for watching. I do appreciate it.